Daniel Mercer?
Yeah, that's me. What's going
You
on?
need to come with us.
For what?
You're under arrest for mail theft and conspiracy to commit financial fraud.
What? That doesn't make any sense. I've worked here 24 years.
Turn around, sir.
You got the wrong person. I just deliver mail.
We recovered the device,
Hands
Mr.
behind
Mercer.
your back.
Daniel Mercer? The man looked up slowly from the sorting table, a bundle of envelopes still in his hands. Yeah, that's me. What's going on? 3 figures stood just beyond the metal racks, 2 uniformed federal officers and a woman in a dark blazer holding a folder pressed tightly against her chest. The fluorescent lights above buzzed faintly, casting a pale glow over the early morning shift. "You need to come with us," one of the officers said. Daniel frowned. "For what?" The woman stepped forward. "You're under arrest for mail theft and conspiracy to commit financial fraud." For a moment, nothing moved. Not the workers behind him, not the hum of the conveyor belts, not even Daniel. Then, "What? That doesn't make any sense. I've worked here 24 years. "Turn around, sir." "You've got the wrong person," he said, his voice rising slightly now. "I don't even... Listen, I deliver mail, that's it." "We recovered the device, Mr. Mercer." That stopped him. A flicker, barely visible, but enough. "What device?" he asked, quieter this time. "Turn around. Hands behind your back." "I didn't take anything. I didn't steal anything. I swear." "Turn around." He hesitated. "I just copied them. That's all I did." The officer stepped closer. "Sir, now." Daniel's shoulders dropped. Slowly, reluctantly, he turned. The sound of the cuffs clicking shut echoed louder than it should have. Around him, the room had gone silent. 24 years on the same route, and it ended in less than 30 seconds. Daniel Mercer had spent most of his adult life becoming someone people trusted without question. He wasn't loud, he wasn't ambitious, he wasn't the kind of man who stood out in a crowd, but he was consistent. And in neighborhoods like Brookhaven Ridge, consistency meant everything. He knew which houses left cookies out in December, which families had dogs that barked but never bit, which elderly residents preferred their mail handed directly to them instead of left in the box. He knew birthdays, anniversaries, names of grandchildren he had never met. He had delivered to the same streets for nearly 2 decades, walking the same sidewalks, opening the same rows of mailboxes, waving to the same faces. To them, Daniel wasn't just a courier. He was part of the routine, part of the system, part of their lives. And that's what made what he did so difficult to understand. He hadn't started there. Daniel grew up in a narrow apartment above a laundromat in Cedar Falls, Iowa. The floors rattled every time the dryers kicked into high spin, and the smell of detergent seeped through the vents, no matter how many windows his mother opened. He was the oldest of 2 boys. His father left before Daniel turned 10. From then on, everything became about stability. Daniel worked early, stocking shelves, cleaning floors, anything that brought in a little extra money. He wasn't exceptional in school, but he never missed a day. "Show up," his mother used to say. "That's half of life right there." He took that seriously. After graduating, he bounced between jobs until a friend mentioned an opening at a regional mail distribution center in Missouri. Benefits, steady hours, pension. Daniel applied the same week. He passed the entry test on his first try. By the following month, he was wearing the uniform. The job suited him. There were rules, systems, predictability. Mail came in, mail went out. Addresses matched names. Routes stayed the same. And for years, Daniel followed that structure exactly as it was designed. His supervisors described him the same way, year after year. Reliable, efficient, quiet, no complaints, no incidents, no reason to ever look twice. By his 15th year, he had been assigned Route 17B, a loop through Brookhaven Ridge and the surrounding subdivisions. It was a comfortable area, not wealthy, but stable. Families who had lived there for decades. Teachers, contractors, nurses, retirees. People who still paid their bills by check. People who raised the small red flags on their mailboxes to signal outgoing mail. People who trusted that once that flag went down, everything would be handled. That trust is what made the system work, because the truth was there was no real oversight between collection and delivery. Once a letter left a mailbox, it became invisible. There were no scans, no confirmation logs, no digital record, just a chain of trust that depended entirely on the person carrying it. For most, that was enough. For Daniel, eventually, it wasn't. It started small, a moment that didn't feel like a decision at the time. Late summer, heat pressing down through the windshield of the delivery van, the air inside thick and unmoving. Daniel had pulled over near a quiet cul-de-sac, sorting the outgoing mail he had collected so far. That's when he noticed it. A birthday card. Bright envelope, handwritten address, slightly heavier than the others. He didn't open it, at least not then. He held it up, tilting it just enough to catch the light. There it was, a rectangular outline inside. A check, probably a few $100s. Nothing unusual, he'd seen thousands of them over the years. But this time, something lingered. He reached into his pocket, pulled out his phone, and paused. Just a second. That's all it took. He snapped a photo, front and back, routing number, account number, signature. Then he slid the phone away, placed the envelope back into the stack, and continued his route. He told himself it meant nothing, just curiosity, just a one-time thing. It wasn't. A week later, he did it again, then again. Each time, it felt easier, less like a decision, more like a routine. What Daniel didn't realize, or maybe chose not to think about, was what those images could become in the wrong hands. Because somewhere else, not far from the quiet streets of Brookhaven Ridge, there were people who knew exactly how to use them. People who understood that a photograph of a check was just as valuable as the check itself, maybe more. By the time Daniel understood that, it was already too late to stop. And by the time anyone else realized something was wrong, the damage had already begun. At first, nothing seemed connected. A missed payment here, a late notice there. Small things, isolated inconveniences. A woman named Carol Jennings received a letter from her insurance company stating her policy had lapsed. She was certain she had mailed the check 2 weeks earlier. She even remembered sealing the envelope at her kitchen counter, double-checking the address before walking it out to the mailbox. She called the company. They told her the payment had never arrived. "Mail delays happen," the representative said. "You may want to send another check." So she did. Across the neighborhood, similar conversations were happening. A retired electrician named Thomas Green noticed a late fee on his utility bill. A young couple on Maple Ridge Drive received a warning about their car loan. An elderly man had his medication coverage temporarily suspended. Each situation felt personal, unfortunate, but explainable. Mail gets lost sometimes. People forget things. Mistakes happen. No one was thinking about Daniel Mercer. Not yet. Because from the outside, nothing about his routine had changed. He still waved at the same families, still stopped to chat when someone caught him on the sidewalk, still delivered birthday cards, holiday greetings, and utility bills with the same steady rhythm he had followed for years. But inside the delivery van, something had shifted. The process had become refined, deliberate, efficient. Daniel no longer hesitated when he came across an envelope that felt slightly heavier than the rest. He could tell by touch now. Weight, texture, the faint stiffness of folded paper inside. He would collect the outgoing mail as usual, moving from house to house, lowering flags, filling his satchel.
Then, somewhere along the route, he would find a quiet place, a dead-end street, an empty parking lot, anywhere no one was watching. He would sit in the driver's seat, engine idling, and begin sorting, carefully, methodically. The envelopes that didn't matter stayed sealed. The ones that did, he handled differently. A thin blade, kept tucked beside the seat, allowed him to open them cleanly along the edge. No tearing, no visible damage. Inside, he would find what he was looking for: checks, mortgage payments, insurance premiums, tax filings, birthday gifts. He photographed each one, front and back, clear, centered images. Then he resealed the envelope with a small glue stick he kept in the console, pressed it closed, placed it back into the stack. From the outside, nothing looked disturbed. The mail continued on its path. But the information, the only part that truly mattered, had already been taken. And that information didn't stay with Daniel. It moved, quickly, silently, through encrypted messages sent late at night when the house was quiet and the world felt far away. On the other end of those messages was a man named Victor Hale. Daniel had met him by chance months after that first photograph, a conversation in a parking lot, a mutual acquaintance, a vague mention of extra money for simple work. At first, Daniel didn't understand what Victor was asking for. Then Victor explained it. Not the whole operation, just enough. "Photos," he said. "Clear ones. That's all I need." "What do you do with them?" Daniel asked. He smiled. "You don't need to worry about that." He should have walked away. Instead, he asked the only question that mattered. "How much?" "50 per check." Cash. No records. No trace. At the time, it sounded harmless. Detached. Daniel wasn't taking the money from anyone directly. He wasn't cashing the checks. He wasn't altering them. He was just capturing images. That's how he justified it. That's how he kept going. By the beginning of the following year, Daniel had turned it into a routine. 10 checks a week became 20. 20 became 30. On some days, he found more than that. Each envelope another opportunity. Each photograph another payment. The money came in quietly, small amounts at first, then larger, always in cash. Left in places that didn't attract attention. A folded envelope under a seat, a bag placed beside a dumpster, a brief exchange in a crowded parking lot where no one looked twice. Daniel never deposited it all at once. He spread it out. Used some for bills, some for repairs, some for things he had told himself he could never afford before. A new appliance, a short vacation, helping his daughter with tuition payments. Each purchase felt justified, necessary even, because in his mind, he wasn't stealing, not really. He was just taking advantage of a system that had gaps. Gaps no one else seemed to notice. But eventually, someone did. It started with a man named Eric Lawson. Eric worked in cybersecurity for a regional healthcare network. Numbers and patterns were part of his daily life. When his parents called him one evening, something in their voices made him listen more carefully than usual. His mother sounded confused. His father sounded angry. They had received a notice from their bank. Several payments, mortgage payments, had been processed, but not to their lender. The amounts were correct, the dates matched, but the funds had gone somewhere else entirely. Accounts they didn't recognize, names they had never seen. Eric drove out the next morning. He sat at their dining room table, spreading out bank statements, checkbook copies, and printed notices. At first, he thought it might be a banking error. Then he noticed something strange. Every missing payment had one thing in common. They had all been sent by mail. He started asking questions. Neighbors, friends, anyone his parents knew. At first, people hesitated. Then they started sharing. Similar stories. Checks that never arrived. Payments that disappeared. Late notices that didn't make sense. Eric began documenting everything. Addresses, dates, amounts. He built a spreadsheet, mapped the incidents, and slowly a pattern began to emerge. Every single case fell within the same delivery route, the same cluster of streets, the same daily path. Eric stared at the map on his laptop screen, the highlighted addresses forming a tight, unmistakable shape. He didn't know exactly what it meant yet, but he knew one thing for certain. This wasn't random, and it wasn't accidental. Someone was at the center of it all. Someone with access. Someone who moved through those streets every day without question. Someone no one would think to suspect. Eric closed his laptop and leaned back in his chair. For the first time, the thought crossed his mind. What if the system itself had been compromised? And what if the person responsible had been standing right in front of them all along? The next morning, he filed a formal complaint, not with the local office, but with federal investigators. Because whatever this was, it was bigger than a missing check, and it was only just beginning to unravel. The complaint didn't sit untouched for long. Within days, it landed on the desk of a federal investigator named Alina Voss, a quiet, methodical analyst known for taking apart internal fraud cases piece by piece. She didn't start with accusations.
She started with patterns. The report Eric Lawson submitted was detailed, more detailed than most civilian complaints. It included dates, addresses, transaction amounts, and a crude but effective map showing the overlap between victims. Alina printed everything, spread it across her desk. Then she did what she always did first. She asked one question. What's the common point of failure? It didn't take long to find. Every incident traced back to outgoing mail, every outgoing piece of mail from the same route, and every route had one thing in common, a carrier. She pulled the assignment logs, Route 17B, assigned to Daniel Mercer. 18 years, no prior incidents, no disciplinary records, clean, too clean. Alina leaned back in her chair, studying his file. People like Daniel weren't usually the problem, but when they were, they caused the most damage, because no one was watching them. She requested financial records next. It took time, subpoenas always did. But when they came in, the first discrepancy appeared almost immediately. Daniel's reported income didn't match his spending, not dramatically at first. A few extra expenses, minor upgrades, then more. Large cash purchases, unexplained deposits spread across multiple accounts. Nothing flashy, nothing that would trigger alarms on its own, but together they told a story. And it wasn't one of a man living within his means. Alina circled the figures with a ken. Then she made the call. Surveillance. They didn't rush in. They didn't confront him. Instead, they watched. An unmarked vehicle followed Daniel's route over several days. At first, everything looked normal. He moved efficiently, stopped at each mailbox, followed the same rhythm he always had. But then, on the third day, they saw it. He pulled into a narrow side street. No houses facing the road, no foot traffic. He stayed in the vehicle longer than necessary. Too long. The cameras zoomed in. Through the windshield, they could see his hands moving, sorting, opening, pausing, then lifting something briefly toward his lap. The angle wasn't perfect, but it was enough to justify the next step, a search warrant. They executed it early in the morning. Daniel wasn't home when they arrived. His wife stood in the doorway, confused, watching as agents moved through the house with quiet precision. They didn't tear the place apart. They didn't need to. They knew what they were looking for, and they found it in the garage, hidden behind a plastic storage bin filled with old tools. A tablet, black case, worn edges. It powered on immediately. No password. Inside, a folder, hundreds of files, then thousands. Each one a photograph. Checks, front and back, clear enough to read every detail. Routing numbers, account numbers, signatures, dates, amounts, years' worth of them. Alina stood over the device as one of the agents scrolled through the images. How many? Asked Alina.
Rough estimate, replied the agent. 2,000, maybe more? Alina didn't respond. She didn't need to. The scale spoke for itself. They had everything they needed. Now all that was left was to end it. Daniel Mercer reported to work the next morning, like he always did. 5:52 a.m. Same parking spot, same entrance, same routine. He poured coffee into a paper cup and took his place at the sorting table, flipping through bundles of letters, organizing them with practiced ease. For a moment, everything felt normal, until it didn't. Daniel Mercer? The voice came from behind him. He turned slowly. 3 figures stood there. He recognized one immediately, not by name, but by presence, authority, the kind you don't question. His grip on the mail tightened slightly. Yeah? The woman stepped forward. We need to talk. About what? You already know. His stomach dropped. Just enough. He set the letters down. Is something wrong? You're under arrest for mail theft and conspiracy to commit financial fraud. The words landed harder this time, because now he understood. No, that's not. Listen, he said quickly. There's been some kind of mistake. We recovered the device, Mr. Mercer. Silence. Real silence. The kind that fills a room completely. I didn't take anything, he said, his voice lower now. I never cashed a single check. Turn around. I didn't steal from anyone, he insisted. He stopped himself. Too late. The officer stepped closer. Hands behind your back. Daniel looked around, at the people he had worked beside for years, some of them staring, some of them looking away. I've been here almost 20 years, he said, almost pleading now. You can ask anyone. I've never had a problem, not once. We know, the investigator replied. That was the part that broke him. His shoulders dropped. His hands trembled slightly as he turned. I just needed extra money, he said quietly. That's all this was. I wasn't trying to hurt anybody. The cuffs clicked into place. Cold. Final. They weren't supposed to lose anything, he added, almost to himself. It wasn't supposed to go like that. But it had, and there was no undoing it. The charges came fast. Multiple counts of mail theft, financial fraud, identity-related offenses, each tied to a different victim, each carrying its own weight. The investigation uncovered the full scope within weeks. Thousands of stolen check images, hundreds of affected accounts, families dealing with drained funds, frozen credit, and mounting penalties. Some cases were minor, others weren't. One couple, David and Eleanor Briggs, had spent over 30 years paying off their home. They were months away from owning it outright. Then, the notices started. Missed payments, late fees, escalation. By the time they understood what had happened, it was already too late. The funds had been diverted, the accounts emptied. The process moved forward without them. They lost the house that same year. During the trial, Eleanor took the stand. Her voice was steady at first. We did everything right, she said. We paid on time, every month, for decades. She paused. And the one person we never questioned was the one who made it all disappear. The courtroom was silent. Daniel didn't look at her. He couldn't. The verdict came quickly. Guilty on all major counts. The sentencing followed months later. The judge didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. For years, he said, you were entrusted with access to people's lives in their most private form, their communications, their finances, their security. He paused, glancing down at the file. You chose to exploit that trust repeatedly, not once, not by accident, but systematically. Daniel stared straight ahead. You've caused damage that cannot be fully repaired, financially or otherwise. The sentence was read. Years in federal custody, restitution orders, permanent loss of employment eligibility in any public service role. Everything he had built, gone. Daniel Mercer was transferred to a low-security federal facility hundreds of miles from the neighborhoods he once walked every day. The routine followed him there. Different walls, different system, same structure. But this time, no one trusted him. Back in Brookfield Ridge, life moved on. New families moved into old houses. Mailboxes were still raised each morning. Checks were still written. But something had changed. Something subtle. A hesitation. A second thought. Because once trust is broken at that level, it doesn't come back the same. And for hundreds of people, the damage wasn't just financial. It was personal.